Hello, my name is Michael Leggett, and I want to do a quick video about how some tips and tricks on taming Gmail and taming your inbox. A little bit of context, I was once the lead design for Gmail. I actually worked at Google for about 10 years, half of which I worked on Gmail and Google Inbox as co-founder of Google Inbox, and I led the design and research team on Gmail. Met a lot of really cool people and had some fun. And since then, I moved on. I largely work on climate change, but also between jobs and in my nights and weekends, I run a browser extension called Simplify Gmail that transforms Gmail into a more powerful and simpler experience. This video is not an ad for Simplify. I will touch on, it's available across browsers, so for Chrome as well as other browsers, and makes, Gmail look like this or like this. Or if you use the reading ping like this, or if your inbox is 0, gives you a nice little reward like this. So most of this will be about what you can do without Simplify or any other extension. There's a lot you can do with Gmail, how to get to inbox 0, how to stay there. Because I get a lot of emails like this where people have said, man, I've got so much email in my inbox and I am so overwhelmed. Do I just get a new email address? Could Simplify help? And sure, Simplify can help, but again, I think there's a lot you can do without Simplify, and a lot of this is, some of it's, tips and tricks, and Gmail is quite a beast. There's a lot you can do with it, and some of it's also good habits. So let's first kind of hit on, how to get to inbox 0. So you've got a lot of email in your inbox. It's the new year. You'd love to cut that back down to something manageable, maybe all the way down to 0. And one way is something called, email bankruptcy. I'm just going to select all and delete, or I'm going to select all and archive, effectively taking it out of the inbox. I would definitely archive before I delete. So I think that that's a fine strategy. But before you do that, I think there's some ways to make it a bit more manageable and make sure you're not dropping anything that's really important. So here's kind of a 6 steps that I think can help get to something, before you archive everything. And this is how I generally, if I get behind, which I do from time to time, this is how I clean out my inbox. So I've put a lot of stuff back in my inbox to kind of give, and this is a test account, so there's not as much, there's no real personal mail in here. But this is kind of how I would go through it. So the default inbox for Gmail has these 3 tabs. And when you're cleaning out your inbox, you might actually want to enable all of the tabs. So I'm going to click on the settings gear. I'm going to scroll down to inbox type and click customize. And then I'm going to turn on updates and forums. This is going to be the full set of tabs. Forums is really, email lists, and I guess it says if you hover over it, discussion boards and whatnot, newsletters. So, I've got some in there. Updates is a catch-all for anything that's really not from a human, that's not a mailing list, that's not some kind of social network notification, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, etc. And it's not promotional. A lot of stuff goes into updates. So this is, travel itineraries, receipts, purchases, invoices, financial statements, notifications from other services that aren't social networks. So I get a lot of stuff in here from Google Docs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of different kind of catch-all. And then primary is everything that's left over. So interestingly, a lot of this stuff is under primary. It's also under updates. I don't know if that is, let's see what happens if I refresh. Whoops. So now my primary is different. I think it was just a little out of sync. And I think that, Gmail will try to be clever and I guess if you start something, it'll put it out of the category. So there's a lot of ways you can use this, but really what I wanted to get at here with this is a great way to kind of first cut down your inbox, is use these categories. So I might start with promotions. I might skim the, last, couple weeks, see if there's anything really important there. If anything jumps out, oh gosh, I really wanted to read, all of the stuff from Wavebox. Maybe I'll do a quick search for, from Wavebox to kind of catch those. And so as I'm going through this, so let's say actually I did want to do that. Let's say I wanted to read everything from Wavebox. I might do a search for that. I might decide, yeah, actually, I really only want to read some of these. And then I might create a label, and I've actually already created one called 2023 here. And so I might just start labeling stuff I really want to come back to and keep around. But for the most part, go back to the inbox, promotions. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to do a lot of select all. I'm going to select all. So this is across all the pages. So that might be hundreds or thousands of messages. And I'm just going to archive it. I'm going to take it out of the inbox. It's still in my account. You can delete it for promotional mail, sure. Why not? Delete it. That's kind of up to you. But personally, I often will just archive stuff in case I want to come back to it. I can always go through and delete stuff later. So I'll do that for most of these categories, and some of them might have not much for you. Some might have a lot. And updates is probably going to have a ton of stuff. Forums. I also might select all, or I might just select all the unstarred. If maybe you have a habit of starring messages you want to come back to, that's another thing you can do. Is say in inbox and is starred. So in inbox is anything that's going to be in the inbox is starred. Anything that's actually starred. I might say, oh gosh, there's a few things that are important here. That one's not important. That one's not important. That one's not. I dealt with that one. Oh, but these are actually important. So let me remember that. Let me again put that in my 2023 label. Make sure I don't lose those. The other ones were unstarred, and so they're no longer in this view. So some combination of kind of looking for things I want to hold on to and looking for large bulks of things that I can get rid of. So in the forums, I might, skim through here, looking at stuff that's recent and eventually just select everything, select all and archive. Updates is the most diverse, and that one's kind of tricky. So this actually brings me to one of my next tricks here, which is the secret categories. So updates, there's actually 3 other categories that were in Google Inbox. And you can see this sometimes happens actually real quick. Sometimes you'll select all and then select everything and say archive, and then you wait and it doesn't all archive. So sometimes you have to do that a couple times. All right. So there's 3 secret categories, and they actually still work. So one of them is called category finance. And I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of stuff in these, but let me go ahead and show you. There's purchases, finance, and travel. Emails that match these 3 categories are all under updates. So it used to be these were separate categories under in Google Inbox. Under Gmail, they consolidated them because they didn't want to have 8 tabs across the top of the inbox, and so everything kind of got lumped into updates. You can still search for these though. So category : finance, category : purchases will bring up anything that, and in this account I don't have a lot of that stuff. Travel is another one. So there's not much in this account, but these do work. And there's actually a really cool trick you can use to actually kind of revive these as living and breathing categories that you can actually put email in and out of. So this is another thing you might do just to look for important stuff that you want to hold on to, or that you want to bulk archive, or some combination of the two. So I'm constantly kind of looking for the few gems I want to hold on to, and then the things I can actually bulk archive. Once I've done that, and I go back to my inbox, my updates will have less stuff in it. And so eventually I'm going to kind of skim this and go through the last few months. I'm just kind of looking for anything that's important. If I see something that's important, I might actually just go ahead and label it that 2023 that I'm looking to kind of hold on to. And eventually I'm going to feel comfortable saying, yeah, I didn't go through everything. Maybe I went through the first 2 pages, but at this point I'm ready to just archive everything. So I select all, then I select everything that matches, and I archive. And this will eventually clear out. Give Gmail a minute. Be patient with it. Really try to be patient for that notification to come up, for it to really look like it's done. Let me go ahead and select all again. You can see 33 are still there for no unknown reason. And I'm going to go ahead and archive again. And so now under my primary, I had 3,000 emails in my inbox. I'm down to 922. So I've made a lot of progress. So here's where the work kind of really cuts in. What I personally do is I will, sometimes if there's other labels I use, if I use filters, I'll do that same thing as I'm doing on the promotions tab. So I'll look for senders that I find are really, either really important or really common. Man, I'm getting a lot of stuff from Rambox, so maybe I'll do, maybe I'll do this and see. Oh, it's only a few messages. Is that really worth it? Probably not. But if there are any, I think, let's see, what's another common one? I get a lot of stuff from Mozilla. I think I probably cleared all those out though. And I'll say in inbox. It's the other thing. From Mozilla in inbox. Okay, none. So, you might do a few more of these looking for other large, mass amounts of messages. You also might say like in the inbox, is unread. Maybe I only want to look at the things I still haven't looked at, and I'll skim through that. So typically I'll just go back whatever I'm comfortable with. Maybe it's, a few months, maybe it's more, maybe it's less, and looking for things that, I really want to kind of come back to. So maybe this one I decide I want to come back to. You can also try this important thing that may or may not work for you. So you can say is important. This is what Gmail thinks is important to you. So that's, still hundreds of messages. How many is it exactly? It's not going to tell me until I get to the end. 260 instead of 900, almost 1,000. So that's fewer messages. So again, I might skim through these, say, yeah, let me, oh yeah, I actually do want to come back to that one. Maybe I'll open it. Maybe I'll deal with it. But generally, if like I haven't dealt with it, in the last 3+ months, probably not coming back to it. So at some point, and you can select all that match this search, or you could say, everything that's not important, just put a minus before that. And so, this is the 700 and some odd messages, give or take. Now there's a whole dynamic to how search is. I'm not even gonna get into that. Yeah. So trying to look for either, kind of the unimportant stuff that I can bulk archive, the important stuff that I might want to like, add to my label over here, that I do want to come back to, and eventually I'll select all of these, and I will go ahead and archive them. And certainly, I just did all the unread ones. Certainly, let's do all the read ones too, if it's not important. Now, it's interesting. You'll see. I guess I will go ahead and explain this. So, in the inbox is read and is not important. Well, there's an unread message, and there's an important message. So, what's going on here? Well, Gmail search, the UI, while it's all conversation based, right? I see conversations, the back end in search is all actually message based. So what this means is there is a message in here that's not important, or Gmail thinks so, even though it says the conversation is important. Importance is actually deemed on a message by message basis. Same thing with labels, same thing with stars, same thing with read and unread state. Each message inside a conversation has, labels or doesn't have labels. So if I apply a label to this conversation, it's actually applied to each of the 5 messages in it. If a new reply comes in, that new reply will not have that label you've applied to it, even though it appears on the conversation. It's confusing, but all that means is searches can be tricky. Sometimes you search for it, something like show me all the read threads that aren't important, and you get back threads where there are important messages or there are unread messages. Drafts is another great folder to clean out. I'll eventually kind of skim through this, look for other threads that I want to come back to, and eventually get comfortable that I can archive them all or not. And sometimes, yeah, okay. So how are we doing? What are we down to? 434 messages. So at some point, you've whittled it down as much as you can, and you're just going to scroll through the actual main inbox looking for important stuff. So I would say I give it, maybe 1 to 2 minutes per page of 100. I'm just really skimming for anything that jumps out at me. Oh gosh, yeah, I forgot I was talking to this person. I never did get back to them. Maybe I'll come back to that one. You're going to miss some stuff, but I'd say all of this is, 30 minutes of your time is better than you just archiving everything without even, kind of looking at it. But that's also acceptable. So at some point, I'm going to feel like I've got it all. I'm going to go ahead and select everything. I'm going to archive. And this archives everything, including the things that we labeled 2023. And so what I'm going to do at the end of this is I'm going to put those messages back in my inbox. And really what I actually prefer to do, so look, almost everything is done, but not everything. Archive it. I don't know why that one doesn't want to archive. All right, so now everything is gone. All my tabs, I'm back. I'm in inbox 0. I've made it. I might at this point come to this 2023 and say, gosh, only 11 messages. Let me actually just go ahead and process these. Let me decide if it's important. Let me open them up. Let me read them. Let me either reply and say, I'm sorry it took me so long, or just go ahead and archive it. I'm not going to reply. I might also go ahead and look at my drafts. Gosh, there's a lot of drafts in here that are not, some of them are just blank. Just delete it. Some of them are not. They've got some, attachments. I don't know what I was doing with that. Just go ahead and delete that. So clean out, sometimes I'll clean out my drafts and different things. Eventually I'll decide, maybe we'll decide that, let's say, these turned out to not be important. So I'll go ahead and archive them. Or actually they already archived. I'll go ahead and remove this label, I guess. I'll remove that label, and then I'll move the rest of them to the inbox, just like that. And I'll go ahead and remove this label. Actually, at this point, I'm kind of done with this label. I'm just going to delete the label. Remove label. This will kill the label and remove it from any threads it's on. Boom, done. My inbox is down to 5 from 3,000. So that's a quick overview how to get to inbox 0. This video is turning out to be longer than I'd hoped. What are you going to do? So I clean out those categories. I'll sometimes use those secret categories. I'll look for kind of big senders in the primary inbox. I'll search for important mail or unimportant mail, trying to kind of look for things I want to hold on to, things I can bulk archive, and eventually I get it down to where I'm ready to just hit the archive button, kind of declare inbox bankruptcy, archive everything, and then I'll scan those last messages that I said I wanted to come back to. So how do you stick with it? How do you kind of keep things clean? I actually don't really like the inbox tabs. I like these categories, but I don't like these tabs because it gives me 5 inboxes to check, or maybe 3 inboxes. And maybe it's nice because I can maybe ignore those, but it's still more inboxes to check, which I find kind of annoying. I also don't really like all of this different clutter that Gmail gives me, all these icons, all these icons. So with Simplify, I'll go and turn that on briefly. I let you hide, so the add-ons are actually under the profile photo when you need them. The tabs over here are hidden, but you can expand it if you want to. And if you minimize the nav, it totally hides. So this helps me, regain some sanity. The next thing I do is, I probably hear my children yelling in the background. I don't actually use the default inbox. I use the priority inbox, and I use a customized version of that. And I think if I go here, so I'll customize it. And what I do is I start with unread, the top, starred, and actually this, if you leave it like this, will be inbox, in the inbox and starred. If you click more options, you can actually click starred here, and it'll be all starred, whether it's in the inbox or not, which I like. The next one I will typically use either drafts or sent mail, and then everything else. And I'll save changes on that. And so what this does is, wow, there are all my drafts that were hidden that I was missing out on, and maybe ignoring stuff that I meant to finish. This does a nice job of kind of giving me the things I need to read, the things I need to act on, the things I need to send, and everything else. And so I'll go through and I'll actually, I try to kind of do bulk processing. So, a few times a day, maybe once in the morning after I've kind of set my agenda for the day, I'll check email for half an hour and try to just cruise through these. And if I can reply real quick, I reply. If I can't, I'll start and try to come back to it later. So let's say eventually I read these. Let's say I deal with some of these and I can unstar them. You're seeing Simplifies moving some stuff around. And so eventually my inbox gets down to a few starred messages. Maybe I finally kill off some of these things. Gosh, I don't know. I'm not, these are, I think, mostly tests. delete them, but there's just going to be more to contend with. Am I really going to do this? I think I'm going to do this really quick. I don't know what all these are. So I have some nice keyboard shortcuts with Simplify where I can just hit the delete button. But eventually, I'm going to get a bunch of stuff under everything else, I think. Where did it all go? Well, that's where it should go. Oh, I think it's because it was all starred, but I did mark a few things as red. Interesting. I'm not sure what happened. Well, eventually everything else fills up. And under everything else, there's this nice archive all visible. And so I usually have this set to 50 items. Oh, there they go. I'm not sure why that did anything there. So this will build up, and every once in a while, I'll either just leave this collapsed, kind of use it as I need to, and maybe once a week or something, I'll come in here and just clean this out. This is all kind of the messages that I don't really need. So this is how I kind of maintain inbox 0, is starred is the stuff I need to come back to and deal with. Eventually, I take care of these. I can unstar them when I don't need to come back to them anymore. And drafts are, hopefully I keep those things cleaned out as well. I don't know what the heck that is. I really don't. No, I don't think these are important. Yeah, this is just tests. Yeah, other. All right. So eventually, and then most of these sections I'll have set to only show, hide it when it's empty. I like that. Hide that when it's empty too, sure. And Simplify gives me a nice reward when I really do truly reach inbox 0. It gives me a nice little background, which you can customize. But it's also nice in Gmail just to have an empty inbox. So let's see. I think we talked a little bit about the inbox types. There's other inbox types. The reason I like the priority inbox over, there's also multiple inboxes. This actually lets you set up certain searches, which is great, but it doesn't have this cascading effect where things are only in one section. So you'll have the same thread in multiple sections with multiple inboxes. This important first, unread first, starred first, these are all just variants of the priority inbox, where these different things. So these are basically all the same. They're just different versions. Try, figure out which one you like best. And the default inbox is that tabbed inbox. You can use the tabbed inbox and turn off all the tabs if you want. And then that's kind of like classic Gmail, where you just have a single list. So I do like those categories though. And if I'm using the priority inbox, I'm kind of losing out on those categories. Where do they go? And this brings me to what I do with one of the things I do with Simplify. So we talked about inbox types. How do I bring back these categories? So I use Simplify, the third version of Simplify, which if you go to here and you scroll down, there's a link to the third version here. Right now it's only on Chrome and Chrome-based browsers, but I'm going to roll the dice here and switch to my personal inbox. This is probably going to be a bad idea. We'll see what happens. Let me take that off screen for a second and just switch back here to the normal inbox I use, and refresh. And then there it goes. All right, here we go, maybe. Gmail's having trouble. Should have been a little more ready. All right, well, I'll show it with this. What I do, well, that's not going to go in there. One of the things I do is you can actually, so what's one of the things Simplify does, or it's, in the main version it's going to do, what the V3 beta does, is you can turn any label that you apply via a filter. So anytime you want to set up a filter, say you get a lot of messages from Hannah Anderson, you can just click on filter messages like these, and it'll let you, anytime you get a new message that matches certain, criteria, from a certain person or has certain words in it, or is categorized a certain way, is a really cool one. So that's actually how I resurrect those three categories. Is I have a filter where I take anything that's categorized as travel and I put it into my own label called travel or trips. That lets me add new messages to it. So what I get with this is I have this process-based inbox, this priority inbox, where I have all my unread stuff, starred stuff, all my drafts, and everything else. And then messages are actually bundled and grouped, so I can process. Like, here's all my calendar, notifications. Here's some stuff related to Simplify. Here's all the stuff that Gmail, says is based about social. Here's all the promotional stuff. And so I can click on the first one, and Simplify will actually let you go through one by one. Or I can bulk, kind of archive these, and that works, in any of these sections. So this, it certainly helps me stay on top of things. Let's see, go back to, so I didn't go too deep into how I resurrect these. I do set up filters for category : purchases, and then I take it out of, I put it in the primary category because otherwise it's just still going to be in the updates category, and I apply the label that matters to me. That I create for, so orders is my one for purchases. I think travel you can do for travel, and finance for finance. I use bundles, and I've got a whole bunch more videos on that, but again, I'm not here to sell you on Simplify. And that's really kind of how I keep my inbox sane. The last thing I'll say is one of the great things about email is the social contract we have is, it's a little fuzzy. Is this something I think a lot of people live in their inbox, and they feel like as soon as they get an email, they have to respond right away. And I think it's, it feels great to send out an email and get a response right away, but email is not texting. It's not chat. It's not a real-time conversation. It's okay to respond a little bit later. Now, that's not universally true for some emails and some jobs. That's you can't, time is money, and you can't delay. But I will say that I try to kind of check my email, in the morning, maybe after lunch, and then at the end of the day. Sometimes, I check it more often. It's like probably more often than I'd like to admit. But I try to kind of do it in batches and bulk process, go through and kind of get things out of my unread, clear out the start, and kind of get things into everything else as much as I can. And there's a lot of filters and bundles and these categories, and all these different things can kind of be helpful in batching messages into like message type things to make it easier for me to bulk process. And that's really kind of a recurring theme for me. It's ended up being really long, almost half an hour. Hopefully it was helpful. And best of luck with reaching inbox zero and keeping it. And feel free to try Simplify out if you think that might help. I'm always trying to add tools, and I do a bunch of different stuff with it. It's free to use, and if you love it, it's $2 a month to keep it, because it does take a fair bit of work to keep Simplify working with Gmail. But there's a lot you can do with Gmail without Simplify, and best of luck.